zone and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Redbird Reboot.
There we go. Hello. All right. Let's get this ready to go. Arizona Cardinals fans, this is the Redbird Reboot podcast. You got Blake and Marcos are here, and we've got a live Cardinals game coming up on Thursday Night Football. Sorry if there was a technical difficulty there at the beginning. We've been trying to get adjusted with the title. So, yes, this is not a Panthers recap. This is in fact, Seahawks preview. Super glad to jump in for a quick show before we get on the road, or at home, shall we say, with the Cardinals at State Farm Stadium. Marcos, how are you as we get started with a fairly quick recap? We'll be hopping off just as kickoff begins for Arizona, and this is a pretty critical game for Arizona, considering the fact that they're 2-1. They have one loss against an NFC West division rival. You don't want to start out 0-2 against your division. That's just a huge hill to have to climb back up from.
Well, I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm just glad I was able to traverse all that traffic because the 101's usually a cluster, so people be careful if you're driving on the 101. Obviously, the weather outside is kind of heating up again. Other than that, it's been pretty good so far.
Oh yeah, no, it's a tough time, at least when you're trying to drive through on those Thursday games, because you got to fight all sorts of traffic that doesn't exist on a Sunday. So best of luck to everyone who's out there. If we're catching any of you guys while you're sitting in traffic waiting to get in, hopefully we can help entertain you. In the meantime, let's go ahead and preview this game. This is something where, when it comes down to it, Cardinals right now going in on paper are outclassed by the Seattle Seahawks. The Cardinals defense has been great. The Seahawks offense has actually been pretty great as well. The biggest difference between the two has been the offense. Sam Darnold has been playing as one of the highest and most efficient levels. They are only 15th as far as for where they're ranking with their, I should say at least overall power rankings. When you're taking a look at the Cardinals, about 17th in most power rankings. So it looks like they're pretty evenly matched. Biggest thing is that Seattle's defense has been playing at a very high level overall, while the Cardinals on offense have been very efficient, but we have not seen a lot of explosive plays. Marcos, when you're kind of taking a look at how this matchup goes through, a lot of this offense for the Seahawks is running the ball, getting the ball to Jackson Smith and Jigba, using a little bit of their rookie tight end, Elijah Arroyo, something I think would happen today. And I also think that we're going to probably see a little bit of Cooper Kupp, considering the Cardinals' cornerback room is a little bit banged up. I'm definitely curious, do you see any matchups in this game that you think could favor Arizona, or are there matchups that the Seahawks could use to exploit?
Well, we would hope that, I'm not sure what the news on Devin Witherspoon's going to be. Obviously, he's a good corner. They got themselves another cornerback they just signed, I believe, and he's playing at an all-pro type of level and whatnot. So the only issue that I would have in the cornerback room is that one guy that I'm trying to figure out what the heck his name is and whatnot.
Yeah, Nick Amenwari, I think, is one of the guys who's not playing tonight, but it does look like Witherspoon and Love and all the other guys are going to be active. Well, former Cardinal Josh Jones is inactive. So,
oh my God, that's exactly what I was not hoping for, because there's been a lot of things that have been said. Obviously, most of the focus has been on the offense. The defense has been playing outstanding, and I can't tell you how happy I am to see a defense that I have so much like praise and hope for and whatnot. But the offense itself is, there's many things that are being said out there, and I'm actually kind of glad that, the much maligned PHNX podcast that had Kurt Warner on it, he gave a lot of nuance into this, and then that's my opinion, by the way, with the PHNX thing. He gave a lot of nuance to what was going on and what's going on with the offense and whatnot. And I kind of agree with him on Marvin Harrison Jr. that they should be playing him in a position where he is utilized with his best, on his best skill set and what he does. He's kind of like a person that he could take. He can be the goal ball type of guy, but even if he's draped in coverage, you put it where only he can get it and whatnot. He's supposed to be the get up and get it type of guy. We haven't really seen that very consistent, but I want him to utilize him on those posts and on those digs and whatnot, where he makes one cut and you keep him running and you put it right there where he can continue his momentum and catch it on the run. So that's going to be a challenge to see if they'll even do it, because quite frankly we don't even know if, even if they do something like that, if they're even going to target him on it, if it's just going to be a situation where again it's going to be dink and dunk all day, and of course people are going to be fired up about Petsing after a showing like that.
Yeah, it is one of those games that's in the middle of the week. It is something where there's really going to be not a whole lot of time, not a lot of practicing. Very sloppy game is what we're expecting overall. That's something at least that I'm very curious to see how they're going to react this week, because we saw against the Niners, it seemed like they kind of went in with this game plan of we're going to be efficient with running the ball, taking time off the clock. They did manage to kind of get a little bit of a lead right away, but then gave it up. And it was something where we saw that they were not able to put the Niners away. This is a spot where I think it's a tougher opponent. That's something at least that I'm very curious to be able to see is, are they going to be able to empty out some of like the revolver with some of the different shots, and how will people respond? We saw Marvin Harrison Jr. looked incredibly deflated, like he let the team down. There was not just a touchdown drop that he had earlier in the game, but a wide open deep pass. There's no one on him that basically just took his eyes off of the ball, was ready to turn around and run, seeing exactly how close guys were. Seemed like it was just one of those places where he just felt like he was really had let the team down. How he's able to respond is going to be really interesting, as well as I think when you're looking at the Seahawks lineup, how exactly do the matchups favor? Because one of the things that we can see when we're talking about how the Arizona Cardinals are lining up against Seattle is it's a tale of two cities, or a tale of, two safeties for the most part. We're talking about looking here at the let me pull this up for you guys on our call. Talking about Tariq Woolen, who has been one of the worst ranked cornerbacks in the NFL. He is one of the best ranked corners when targeted overall, at least in, I think it's just complete man-to-man coverage, and in zone coverage has been atrocious. I'll have to double check at least with that, but I think it's been, his overall coverage grade has been terrible this season. One of the things, at least with him, is that he can sometimes look like one of the best corners in the league. Other times he looks like an absolutely terrible corner. Cardinals are going to probably try to get Marvin Harrison Jr. lined up on him more often than not. Can Michael Wilson, who's had only 3 catches through 3 weeks, be able to make something happen? Because the guy on the other side, Josh Joby, has actually played pretty well overall. He's been one of the better corners, at least when it comes to top 40 corner in the league you're talking about. And then like we talked about with Witherspoon, all-around sort of weapon, similar to how Budda Baker goes, but being able to cover in the slot, cover out of the slot. You're going to also see more snaps for Greg Dortch. Zay Jones is not playing this week, so that means that when you are in 11 personnel, it is going to for sure be Dortch in the slot. We have not seen yet, at least if they're going to elevate Zay Weaver. I would not expect Weaver to do that much in the game. I think that they're probably going to run a little bit of 11 personnel, but it's mostly going to be the 12 personnel kind of tight end alignments that we've seen previously. On the other side, Marcos, the one thing that has me a bit worried for the Cardinals is going to be how exactly does things line up with who's going to be on Jackson Smith and Jigba. You've got Max Melton on one side, Denzel Burke on the other. That's something that's going to be a concern. Gray Zabel is protecting super well, and then Anthony Bradford is playing. He is not one of the highest ranked guards in the league, but he is miles ahead better than the backups that they've got. So it'll be really interesting to see exactly how that will go against the likes of Calais Campbell, because on the other side, you're talking at least about Leonard Williams going up against Isaiah Adams, and that's just a huge mismatch. We are getting Paris Johnson in this game, which is one of those like fingers crossed sort of moments that he missed on Sunday. You're hoping that he's going to be effective, but that is a big boost for Arizona when it comes to both the run blocking and in the pass protection game. They're going to need him against Mafe and DeMarcus Lawrence, who signed with the Seahawks this offseason. Any matchups that stand out to you, Marcos, at least, that you think the Cardinals could exploit on the offensive side of the ball? And then we'll go over the defense.
Well, definitely like the matchup against Woolen, which it's kind of shocking that he's this bad especially his rookie year coming out, that he was leading the league in interceptions, but that's because he was being targeted. But that's a matchup that you want to do, that you want to continue to attack, that you want to continue to exploit, mostly because of the fact that if you can't match up in zone, because he's just horrible at being able to you know make the move, read the quarterback size and whatnot. Also, like in man coverage, if he's just that atrocious on both ends, you have to be able to target him on offense. Whoever lines up across from them, that should be where you attack. It is a game of matchups, and that's one that I feel confident about it and whatnot. We'll try to stay away from Devin Witherspoon, even though they move him around and do whatever they please with him and whatnot. Just that guy, he's a hard hitter. He's a ball hawk. He's the type of person who's smart. He's very his thing is all about film study and making sure that he's in the right place in the right area and making the right play.
Yeah, no, I think that's something at least that we're going to have to watch for it, because Witherspoon's the guy that worries me, especially on blitzes. Let's go ahead and switch over with the defensive side to take a look at with a exploit. The one that I see at least here that the Cardinals are going to be able to look at is if you can get Josh Sweat lined up on Abraham Lucas. That's one of the places where what we've seen with Sweat is that Charles Cross has had a good year overall. Now, Gray Zabel's been one of the better as far as pass protecting guards, as far as especially when it comes to rookies in this league. One of the stats I think that came out earlier today came from the likes of Mina Kimes, and I believe it was retweeted by one of our show guests that we've had, and Alex Clancy talked about. He was saying that, hey, like Gray Zabel, according to Next Gen Stats, was the only lineman in the entire NFL with at least 20 snaps in pass protection, 0 pressures allowed. Alex Clancy's like, oh, we should get an interior lineman. And as we kind of know, Marcos, they don't really draft interior linemen for the Arizona Cardinals. That's something at least that Monty Ossenfort does not do in round one. It's something that we've talked about at least. They probably had a chance to this year with the likes of Tyler Booker, who's on IR currently for the Dallas Cowboys. Do you think at least that with the Cardinals and how their interior line play has been, a lot of people question, is Will Hernandez coming back? When's he going to be able to fill in for Isaiah Adams? He is inactive tonight. I think it does show that the interior of the offensive line, the Cardinals trusted Brown, Froholt, and Adams. And so far, it's really just been Froholt who's been fine as far as how he's played this season. They haven't gotten the biggest push for the most part, but really Isaiah Adams has kind of been the disappointment that we've seen in this season, because we hoped that he would be able to take the leap to become a starter. So far, he is not. And I think that if he goes up against Leonard Williams and Williams just starts taking him out, I really would think about pulling him and seeing what you would have with John Gaines, or maybe trying a couple of rotations to go back and forth. They really don't have that much other depth when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals, it seems.
Yeah, it's actually it's. I know that the idea is to draft like guards in the second, third, or fourth round and whatnot. But when you have yourself a good tackle. Obviously, you go get him in the first round and whatnot. But when the guard does go in the first round, it's because he's the top cream of the crop, and anybody who comes second to him, they're way beyond. They're the guys who rise up from the class of guards where you're like, yeah, that guy's going to be a starter. That guy's going to be a good piece. That guy's going to be able to run block effectively. That guy's going to be able to pass protect, and we don't have to worry about that. So with Isaiah Adams taking him in the third round and then starting him after his second year, when you gave him some time to be able to develop on his rookie year and whatnot, not putting him out there, not having him hung out to dry. The idea I know was to give him the starting gig and then see where he goes from there, and hopefully he improves every single week and he keeps improving. But it's been an up and down battle with Isaiah Adams, and I mentioned before, like, Will Hernandez is going to be really important to this team, and people didn't think that was going to be the case. That's the reason why I kept pounding the table to get him signed like now before some other team tries to pick him up and whatnot. Now everybody's yearning for Will to come back.
Yeah, it's one of the places at least where I think that the Arizona Cardinals were probably not going to have any competition for Will, but what we've been able to at least see is that he just has not been healthy. What I heard previously was that we'll see the big guy closer to Halloween. I don't know how close that is going to be to Halloween. It might just be closer to Halloween than to the start of the season. It might just be that we're going to see him in October. I think that's one of the places where, like you said, you want to get him back, but the Cardinals also need to make sure that they're still in it by that time. Because if you lose a game tonight, you're going to take a look at some of the upcoming schedule. You're going to have a game going on against the Titans next week. You then play a red hot, at this point, Indianapolis Colts team. And then you're going to get the good old rivals in the Green Bay Packers before your bye week, which then you'll come back on off of, I should say, with a Monday Night Football game against the Dallas Cowboys and that terrible defense before you play the Seahawks. So what we're talking about, Marcus, is if you end up losing this game, you fall to 2-2. Let's say you beat the Titans, you lose to the Colts, and suddenly you find yourself at least here at 3-3. If you lose to the Packers, you're going to probably find yourself a little bit far out of where the division is by the time where that Seahawks game on November 9th is going to be for your season. If you lose that game, you're going to be talking then at least about being 0-3 in the division with games left to go against the Niners, 2 games against the Rams that would not really matter. This is one of those games where if you can win this one tonight, it sets you up very nicely because you'll have a tough game against the Colts, bookended by a game against the Titans, and then you'll have a difficult game against the Packers. So a loss tonight means you're probably looking at the Cardinals having only one winnable game out of the next 3 on their schedule before the bye week. This is going to have to be one of those desperation sort of games where you need the Cardinals to bounce back in a major way. The question is, do you think they can do that, especially on the offensive side of the ball? What are you seeing that should be the Cardinals and how they can attack Seattle's defense? I think it has to be a Trey McBride game personally, matching him up against the linebackers over in space. And then this has to be a game where Marvin hangs on to the ball. If you can do those things well, Trey Benson being able to be in his first game starting is probably going to have some issues or some mistakes. I talked about on the Seahawks Behind the Enemy Lines preview earlier this week that this should be a Kyler Murray carries the ball 10 times sort of a game. Stick to those strengths for the most part like that one, and hopefully you can dial up a shot or two for Dortch or Wilson. It just feels like this offense is broken enough that we've seen a lot of checkdowns, a lot of incompatibility, and this is a tougher defensive front for the Seahawks, Marcos, which has me questioning, can the Cardinals execute that game plan? Because I'm not sure they can hold up in protection against this front 4 and the likes of Ernest Jones and I believe it's Tyrese Knight is the other starter in the Seahawks front 7. Marcos, can I need to turn on your microphone, buddy, there? It's all good. Looks like he's having some technical difficulties. So, yeah, I'll continue. Let us know when you're back, at least for that. But I'm going to flip over, at least honestly, since I've kind of given my part. We'll talk a little bit about the offense here. Let's talk a little bit with the Cardinals on the defensive side and talk about Darius Robinson. They don't have as much depth with what is left over for the most part when it comes to the defensive end after losing LJ Collier, after losing some of the other guys who were there. Being able to at least get back Will Hernandez and Walter Nolan will be huge for the Lions, but when it comes to Darius Robinson, this so far has been a disappointment. I think that it's going to take some time to ramp up. Johnny Venerable, someone who I think was part of the original Revenge of the Birds podcast we did it back in the day, now is on PHNX, is the time to look for him will be at Halloween as far as for heating up. And I think, Marcos, the question a lot of fans have is, if you have a 2-2 start that you get off to, will Halloween be too late to be able to make that presence known? I go with a 3-year sort of window where you grade a prospect after the first 3 years in total, because sometimes you get an instant hit and then they fall down on their face the next 2 years. Sometimes you get a prospect who, like Trey McBride, doesn't do much in their entire first year and then picks it up in the last 2 games and suddenly is just one of the best at their position. What do you think when it comes to Robinson and some of the development that with him as far as his time frame? Still don't have you there, at least it sounds like, bud. So I'll continue with going through and just kind of cover for all of that. While Marcos is out there, let me talk a little bit with the likes of Mack Wilson, who's had a good game last week against the Niners, a rough game against the Panthers, and is probably going to be needed in this run-blocking offense because a lot of what Clint Kubiak runs is going to be very much discipline that will challenge the linebackers. He's going to try to do misdirection with how their eyes is going to work. He's going to try to make sure that when their running backs are running through and getting some places in space, that they'll be able to have some of that going on. I'm very curious to be able to kind of see exactly how Mack Wilson plays in this game.
All right, testing, testing. Can
You're
you hear
on,
me now?
buddy. I hear you, sir. We're just
Yeah.
talking about Mac Wilson and how he needs to have a good game and be disciplined with his eyes because this Clint Kubiak system, it is going to work to try to get the running backs in space and be able to make sure that you're going to have to not bite onto some of the areas of play action, but stay disciplined is one of the biggest things. A good game from Mac Wilson would go a long way there.
He had like this really good snap against Christian McCaffrey uh, during like the San Francisco game where he basically was able to change direction. He dropped his hips at the right time, and he was just like sticking on him on that Texas route. He didn't get burned. That's usually what Christian McCaffrey is known for. He's like specializes in is burning these linebackers off that Texas route from the backfield, and he was able to stick with them. So yeah, I think he has not only athletic ability but the smarts to be able to do that, so that he knows he's not facing a Christian McCaffrey again. But these running backs are nothing to scoff at, and I trust him in coverage though. So I think I would give him the advantage when it comes to his coverage skills. But he had himself a heck of a game. So I hope he gets us an interception or forces a fumble.
Yeah. The one thing with Torrey Horton, he was a guy that I liked for the Cardinals as a number 2 wide receiver opportunity. Their real number 2 has been Cooper Kupp, but he's just has not looked the same as far as with how he just looks like he's lost a step. It kind of feels like he's in the there's Larry Fitzgerald had a couple of different sort of careers. There was like the early Fitzgerald, there was the Super Bowl Fitzgerald, there was the stretch of bad quarterbacks Fitzgerald, and then there was like the age 32, which is the age that Cooper Kupp is now. Kupp does not look like that. Larry was still playing at a super high level. He looks like the age 36 Larry Fitzgerald at the end where it's like an 800, like he'd get 70 catches for 700 yards. That's kind of where Cooper Kupp looks like he's here, which means that Torrey Horton has actually looked a lot better. He had a huge 95-yard punt return last week. He's the kind of guy that's like their big play threat for the most part, but it really does start and end with Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think if the Cardinals are going to be able to make any plays in this game, it's going to have to be forcing Sam Darnold into a fumble. The Niners did it week 1. They were able to get a sack on him that forced a fumble. That's going to be something we'll watch for Josh Sweat. I think that's going to be huge. And when it comes to being able to be disciplined, we talked already about Mac Wilson and Davis Gaither. This is going to be a big spot for Dadrian Taylor Demerson as well. I think you need to get Budda Baker to stop that run game playing in the box and with rotating through the corners. It's going to be Rabbit. It's going to be Keitrell Clark who's going to get matched up on Horton. We're probably going to have more of a Denzel Burke game because, as we know, Will Johnson is out and not playing for this game as well. Let's do, at least with just a few minutes left in our show, Marcos, let's do a quick score prediction. Who do you have in this game? Who do you think wins? Why do you think that's the case?
Well, until they fix their issues on the offense, I think it's going to be like a 17-15 game. And unfortunately, I have the Seahawks because the Cardinals at this point, they haven't shown me that they can close out in prime time. Now, I think a year ago, I said the Chargers were probably going to win, and the Cardinals ended up winning. So that kind of goes into what I'm saying. I'm trying to see if I can just kind of jinx them.
Reverse jinx. Yeah, exactly.
So that's my prediction.
Yep. So we've got at least what's really cool with this game, it's one that's sloppy. We know it's going to be sloppy. I also have the Seahawks only because I think when you're talking about the gap scheme, Cardinals run gap scheme more than any other team. And when I was on the Seahawks podcast, they talked about the Seahawks defense where Byron Murphy, the second, not that Byron Murphy that was a Cardinals draft pick and now plays with the Vikings, but the other one, the defensive tackle one, he'll just kind of go into a 3-tech stance when they're running a gap scheme and just plant himself where he just is not able to be moved. Big, strong guy. That's something where the Cardinals have to, I think, run some power and run a bit of a different system. That's something I think that on a short week, it's going to be something that will be a pretty decent struggle for them to do. So I've got the Seahawks winning in this game. I had it as a 24-17 win where I think the Cardinals are able to keep it pretty close. But I do think that it's going to have a defensive score in both parts of the game. If you told me it's a 20-17 game where the Cardinals offense is good, I would honestly probably pick that. So that'll be my final prediction of 20-17 with the Seahawks being able to win. Arizona, I think, will score a bit late to keep it close. And then I think we'll get a defensive touchdown or turnover for sure from each team. Well, that'll wrap it up at least for us with this game. Marcos, if you want to reach out to where our viewers and for those listening on the podcast can find the rest of your content.
So now we've migrated over to the Cardinal Rules, so obviously you can find it there. You'll be able to find, our archive stuff is at Redboot Reboot if you want to go see past episodes. And, of course, you can go find me on X at Pancake Soul right over there by my red box or right here.
Absolutely. You can find me at Blake Murphy 7, as well as make sure you're following the Cardinal Rule. We're going to be shifting permanently away from our old YouTube channel to this new one. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. We got the game started right now. Marcos and I both picked against the Cardinals. Let's see if they're able to challenge that and prove us wrong collectively after a tough week in San Francisco. A win would be just exactly what the doctor ordered for the Bird Gang. Thank you guys so much. This has been the Redbird Reboot, and that means that it's time for us to shut down. Take care, everyone, and we'll see you guys on the other side.
Go Cardinals.